When was the last time you truly were bored? Not sitting there scrolling, bored, not multitasking, bored, just sitting there with nothing. Hard to remember, isn't it? We don't want to be bored. Boredom feels like wasted time. You're just sitting there. When everything is telling us we've got to be doing something, you can just pick up your phone. Even if you're doom scrolling, you're still doing something, right? You're not bored. I've got 3 children, and my number one peeve is when they say, I'm bored. And they expect an outside stimulus to help them relieve that boredom. It's so ingrained in our society that every moment we must be doing something, and our children are being brought up with that same mentality. I'm going to show you, though, that boredom is essential for creativity, reflection, and problem solving. I'm going to explore really what boredom is and the multiple research experiments that prove its value. But like I said, modern culture kills it. There are practical steps, though, that I'll walk you through to help bring that boredom back into your life. Yes, this podcast will bring that boredom back into your life. Doesn't sound like a strong sell for a podcast, but by the end of it, hopefully you'll agree that it is a positive. So we think of boredom as really not just that there's nothing to do, but that the current activity lacks any meaning. The neuroscience, though, when bored, is different. The neuroscience says that the default mode network, the DMN, activates when you're bored. The brain shifts into linking memories, simulating futures, and connecting those distant ideas. So the DMN, the default mode network, essentially is like the brain's compost bin. Yeah, ideas, thoughts, memories go into it, and it's quietly breaking things down and creating that fertile ground for further ideas. Now, you can't be bored in the same way when you're doom scrolling. You might be bored of doom scrolling, but your brain won't enter the DMN, the default mode network, which means that your brain doesn't shift to linking those memories, to simulating those futures, to connecting those distant ideas. Because you're keeping your brain occupied, even if it's bored. So many discoveries in the history of humankind have come through boredom. Whether you believe it or not, Newton's apple story. Maybe he didn't get hit by an apple, but perhaps he was just sitting there under an apple tree. Einstein imagining riding a light beam through his daydreaming. All throughout history, breakthrough fuel. And it's only in the current past 15 years, 20 years that we've decided that boredom has to be killed at all times. And not only that, it's probably not that we've decided that in the last 20 years, it's just that we now have the technology to allow boredom to be killed. Do you remember that episode of Star Trek where they have the game that everyone plays and Wesley Crusher is the only one who doesn't get caught up by it? Mobile phones, I feel, are akin to that. We've now got the technology to avoid boredom, and it's across all sections of society, all ages and all cultures. And that's how all-encompassing it is, because no one wants to be bored. And previously, when no one wanted to be bored, they were still bored. They still had the opportunity to be bored. Now we're able to remove that opportunity to be bored, and we really see the negatives from that. I enjoy meditating, and I found that during periods of time when I have fallen into heavy social media and phone usage, which I'll admit I have done in the past, my meditation is so much more difficult. As soon as I close my eyes, all those thoughts, all those ideas I've been holding back, that social media, that my phone usage, that keeping my brain occupied during the day, all those thoughts that have been held back come flooding to me when I meditate, which makes meditating a lot more difficult. When you allow time for boredom, you allow time for your brain to run through all those thoughts. So then when you get to the end of the day, whether you meditate or not, when you get to the end of the day, you can get to bed and you can just go to sleep. If you're one of those people who struggles to get to sleep because their brain can't stop thinking, maybe that's why. Maybe it's because you need to give your brain time to think during the day. Because if it can only find time to think when you're not doing anything else, and the only time you're not doing anything else is when you're trying to get to sleep, then it's going to use that time because the brain needs that time. It needs to go into the DMN, the default mode network. It needs to break all those ideas down That's just how it works. Alright, now let's have a look at some of the research done on boredom and creativity. We'll have a look at a few. I'll give you the links in the description so you can go ahead and have a more detailed look if you'd like. So the first one we're going to have a look at is from 2014, Sandy Mans and Rebecca Cadman. They had participants split up into groups. One group had to copy long lists of phone numbers from a phone book. That is a mind-numbingly boring task. And the control group skipped this. So you had one group which was feeling super bored because they were just copying out numbers, and you had one group that didn't do that. The groups were then asked to list as many creative uses as possible for plastic cups. The results show that the group that was bored, the group that had been copying those long lists of phone numbers from a phone book, produced far more original and unusual ideas. So that boredom forced the brain into novelty seeking. And once a target for that novelty seeking was provided, creativity just flowed. So next time you're stuck doing a dull chore, remember your brain is just priming itself for the next creative breakthrough. Another piece of research from Benjamin Baird and Jonathan Schooler. Participants did a creativity test, similar to the previous one, unusual uses task. Firstly, the participants did a demanding task, a memory exercise, and then they were able to sit and rest quietly. And then they did an undemanding, boring task, reading a dull text. And then they were asked a typical sort of unusual uses for X type task. And just as before, doing that boring task allowed for more creativity. And this is probably why so many people say the best ideas come in the shower. Low-level boredom unlocks creativity. So hopefully we understand that boredom has many uses, and that without boredom we are blocking the DMN. We're stuck on consumption mode. In some ways it's similar to intermittent fasting, because in intermittent fasting what you're doing is you're giving the digestive system a break. You're either in growth phase in your body or you're in repair phase in your body. Now, a lot of people who get into unhealthy eating habits are always stuck in growth phase because they're always eating, and their digestive system, their body's always processing food. That is not healthy. You need to be able to give the body a break, and this is where intermittent fasting helps. What intermittent fasting does is it makes sure that you have periods of time where you're not ingesting anything, allowing your digestive system to sort itself out, your body to sort itself out. All those repair bits and pieces that need to be done can be done. In the same way, boredom does the same thing. Boredom allows you time. Boredom allows you space for creativity. It allows the brain to shift into DMN, which is a different type of mode. It's not the consumption mode, which allows creativity, which allows reflection, which allows problem solving. And the great thing about boredom is that you can make it happen anywhere. How did you get bored? You should seek to get bored. You should be out looking for ways of getting bored. If you're sitting on the underground commuting to work, for example, you could bring a book along. You could look at your phone. You could be doing a Sudoku puzzle. Or you could just literally be staring. Ideally not at the person opposite you, but you could just be staring. You might find the idea surface. If you're waiting in a queue at a supermarket, again, it's so natural just to pull out your mobile phone. Don't do it. Just do nothing. You're sitting at home in between, I don't know, two tasks that you have to do. You're waiting, you may as well pull out my phone. No, don't pull out my phone. You see, each of these is all about pulling out your phone and doing something. And this is what I'm saying. We've used technology to really kill our boredom, and that technology specifically is a mobile phone. I've gone into mobile phone usage in a few of my other videos, but mobile phones are so intrinsic to our day-to-day life. When I'm at work, I've got to use a verification app on my phone, and it has to be on my phone. I can't verify work on my laptop via my laptop. I've got to use my phone. So I have to have my phone with me. Mobile banking. A lot of banks are now just online. So mobile phones have become intrinsic to our day-to-day lives. A lot of people have talked about similar things and have said, just get rid of your mobile phone, or just get a phone that just makes calls. I don't think that's the solution. I think the solution is to actually understand, first of all, why boredom matters, so you're more incentivized to actually be bored. And secondly, learn to use technology in the way that you want to, not in the way that it demands. Mobile phone demands to be used all the time. Mobile phone companies demand you use their phone all the time, so that after your 2-year contract is up, you can upgrade to a similar one because the battery life is slightly better and the camera has a few pixels extra. You want to use a mobile phone the way you want to use it. You want to use it to, well, for me, for example, I want to use it to verify logins at work. I want to use it for phone banking. I want to use it for occasionally looking up stuff. But what I don't want to use it for is to remove space for boredom. And that's the trick. Use it for how you want to use it. Don't use it to remove space for boredom. Because hopefully, as you begin to see, boredom is very important. Just look at the ways phones incentivize us to use them. There are people who are being paid millions to create programs that will trap us in their use. Apps are designed to eliminate boredom. Things like doom scrolling. Well, how can you doom scroll? Well, you have infinite scroll. You didn't have infinite scroll in the past. Now you do. You can just keep on scrolling. You never get to the end, so you never have a moment to pause and think, oh, maybe I should do something else. Autoplay. Again, that feature feels convenient, but it was developed to keep you logged on. Notifications, again, bring you back. And it plays on your dopamine when you get a notification. Oh, I've got a notification, I've got an email, I've got a like, and so on. For mobile phone companies and for companies that create apps, your boredom and your enjoyment of boredom is a loss of revenue for them. So they're going to fight. They're going to fight to keep you on your phone. And you have to, again, make sure you use the phone the way you want to use it, not the way that they want you to use it. Think about all the time in the day, every time you pull out your phone, and I think the statistics are something stupid about how many hundreds of times people check their phone a day. You're waiting in a queue. You're waiting for the kettle to boil. You're waiting for your turn in a conversation, maybe. Those micro gaps are instantly filled, and you just don't give your brain a chance. And even the older generation find it hard just to sit and do nothing. And you can always justify it. And maybe you're an older person, let's say you're, 75, and you think, oh, you know what? I use my phone in the gaps that I have during the day because it keeps my brain sharp. You can always justify these things. You can always justify it. But the boredom is just necessary at any age, and 75 is no age at all. The bottom line is that we don't allow boredom as a society anymore. We are so against boredom. And that's partly because of our obsession with youth culture. And this is another shift that's happened over the same period of time that mobile phones have been introduced. We've increasingly become obsessed with becoming young, having a youth culture. Whereas years ago, people would aim to be more stoic, more adult. Those were signals that you wanted to be an adult. You wanted to show those adult behaviors of sitting down, not doing anything. There's been an increasing push towards youth activity. And young people are, by their nature, always doing something, always active in something, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. However, that's now been misled, and that activity is now being channeled into mobile phone use. So couple that with the pursuance of youth culture, it means that we all want to do the same thing. There was a time when being able to sit on a park bench and do nothing was perfectly acceptable. What else are you going to do? You might be reading a newspaper, maybe briefly, but you can sit there and do nothing. I don't think I've seen anyone sit at a park bench and do nothing. You see them on the phone. So there's a number of things that basically means that we don't allow boredom anymore. But what we don't realize is that boredom is what allowed us to think. As proved in the experiments I talked about earlier, bored tasks mean higher idea generation. Learning to endure that boredom as well builds patience, persistence, and focus. A lot of people with the increasing number of mental illnesses, ADHD, and so on, it's a lack of focus. I'm not suggesting a lack of a physical issue there, but being bored, building that patience, building that persistence, building that focus would help so much in a lot of cases, and would allow you to mediate some of those symptoms by building your patience, building your focus. Something which came naturally to us years ago, before the advent of mobile phones and social media. And some people take this to the extreme. They'll go off to a retreat for a week and they'll think, oh wow, this is amazing. I had the greatest time. I didn't read a book. I was just away for a whole week. And they go back straight into their routine. That's fine. That's like doing a blitz, and it's good. It might give you an idea of what it feels like. But what would be better is actually to do that continuously throughout your day, throughout your weeks, throughout your months, throughout your life. Because a one-off thing is going to help slightly. It might be a good way of kicking off your new mentality. But what we need to do is to reintroduce boredom in our day-to-day lives. Real boredom as well, not just I'm bored looking at my phone boredom, I'm bored watching TV boredom, but actual sit down, I'm not doing anything boredom. Let's have a look at some ways of reintroducing boredom. Firstly, tech-free gaps. If you're commuting or you're waiting, whatever you're doing, when there's little gaps that you have in your day, don't use a phone. Notice how that time stretches when it's not fragmented into Instagram reels. Next, boredom breaks. Schedule 15 minutes of deliberately doing nothing. No phone, no book, no podcast, just sitting. And this is sort of like meditation in a lot of ways. You could do a form of mindful boredom. Instead of sitting there trying to meditate, trying to clear your mind of stuff, you sit there for 15 minutes with your eyes open, not eyes closed, and you observe your boredom. You think about where your mind goes. You think about things that come and go. Don't be tempted to action on them, because when you sit down and you do that, you'll suddenly think, I've got to do this, or I've got to buy this, or I've got to look up this. Okay, hold those thoughts. Nothing wrong with having those thoughts, but don't act at that time on those thoughts. Let your mind sit with them, put them to one side. Fine, I want to buy a gazebo, so I'm going to look up different types of gazebos perhaps. Okay, that's fine. Put that to one side, carry on thinking. What else am I thinking about? Let your mind just wander. So this is a sort of eyes open meditation. Before I started to reintroduce boredom, I hadn't doodled for such a long time, but it's such a good way of bringing your ideas together, because you're essentially not doing anything. You're just sitting there and you're just squiggling something on a piece of paper. It's not quite doing nothing, but it's close enough. You'll find as you start doing it, you start enjoying it, and ideas start to come in your mind. Doodling is like a physical meditation, because you're keeping one part of your mind occupied just enough to allow you still to enter that DMN and allow that creativity to spark. And if you're struggling still with boredom, perhaps it's the terminology, sometimes a rebranding is helpful, right? So let's rebrand boredom to be called mental composting. It's a way of being more productive. Downtime, allowing that new growth. Just as you need composting to make your tomatoes grow, you need mental composting to make your ideas grow. Modern life tells us that boredom is a failure, but boredom is where the brain breathes, where ideas form, and where resilience grows. My challenge to you this week is to schedule 15 minutes of boredom every day. No screens, no distractions, just sit with it. See what ideas surface. Like I said, don't action those ideas within the 15 minutes. So tempting to do so. Just see what ideas surface. Alright, thanks for listening. Click like, press subscribe, and try to share this video with as many people as you can so we can spread my message as far as possible.